Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you guys are doing well. In today's video, I'd like to talk about this very important topic. So someone asked me this question: why do Filipinos leave the Philippines? Now there are plenty of reasons why Filipinos leave the country, but I'm going to share three major reasons why a lot of Filipinos leave the country, or for those who are still in the Philippines, probably most likely the same reasons why they're wanting to leave the country. So a lot of Filipinos leave the Philippines for job and economic opportunities abroad. It is very hard to find a job in the Philippines, and it's extremely difficult to find a good paying job in the Philippines. A lot of Filipinos leave to seek better employment prospects overseas. The allure of better pay, career growth, and stability drives a lot of Filipinos to explore other horizons and other options. And for a lot of Filipinos, those options are available abroad. Now, you would find that a lot of Filipinos are very highly educated. There's a lot of professionals. Every year, you have a lot of graduates, and there's a lot of supply when it comes to the labor force, but there's not enough demand. There's not a lot of jobs available for all of these graduates. So you will find that a lot of Filipinos working in the sales industry have bachelor's degrees. In fact, I myself, when I graduated college, that was my first job because there's really not a lot of jobs available. And you would find that as an applicant, your competition for that one position is very, very tough. You will find that sales clerks, sales associates, people who work in marketing, call centers, even janitors, security guards, a lot of these workers have college degrees. It's crazy. I mean, a lot of these positions you don't need a college degree for, but if you are the company, you have so much applicant, of course you can pick and choose. And you would also find that a lot of Filipino workers, are not really like permanent employees. A lot of Filipinos do end up working as a contractual employees because again, if you are the company, you can pick and choose. And for that same position, you've got about 10 people waiting for that person to get fired. What I'm saying is when I first work on my first job, I worked for SM. A lot of Filipinos do end up working for that company because it's one of the biggest employers in the Philippines. So they hired me, and then I thought I was gonna start at least 2 weeks after hiring. No, they said you're hired, but you know what? We don't have an open position right now. So you're hired, and if we have an open position, we will call you. So hiring you doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna start working. You're kind of like the backup. If someone gets fired, someone quits, I mean, they already have a lot of people available waiting for that job to be open. It's crazy. I was hired, I think, I can't remember if it was March. I can't remember exactly what month, but I ended up waiting 2 more months to actually start working. Literally, they had to wait until someone was let go before I could start working. It's ridiculous. So you would also find a lot of Filipinos have a hard time getting these jobs because again, if you are the company, the qualifications are ridiculous. You can't pick and choose because you've got so many applicants. Not only the person has to be or has a bachelor's degree, they have to meet some of your ridiculous standards. Like when they say the applicant has to have a pleasing personality, they're not talking about your personality whatsoever. They're talking about your looks. You have to meet the specific look beauty standards in the Philippines. I mean, yes, this is how ridiculous it is. So for those who don't meet those standards, I mean, you could have a bachelor's degree, but if you're not pretty enough, it's going to be difficult for you to find a job in sales. I mean, that kind of environment. So a lot of a lot of Filipinos do end up finding themselves in a position where, you know what, the only option for me is to go abroad. And in the Philippines, overseas Filipino workers are often referred to as the modern day heroes of the country because it takes a lot of courage to work abroad. You're going to have to leave your comfort zone. You're leaving your family. You're going to have to, endure a lot of challenges, endure the homesickness, personal sacrifices, and challenges of, working on those, very hard working conditions. So a lot of Filipinos, you will find they do end up working in the Middle East. Okay, I'm gonna have to do something about this light because there's this shade here. Let me get back, okay? So, coming back, I had to close that window. So, a lot of Filipinos do end up working in the Middle East, and that's a very challenging working conditions because I'm not saying all, but a lot of Filipinos do end up facing challenges like, abuse, whether that's physical abuse or sexual abuse, very hard working conditions. So in the Philippines, overseas Filipino workers are considered the modern day heroes. And you know what? They do deserve that. You do end up sacrificing a lot, not just being away from your family, and they also contribute to the economy of the Philippines. Someone mentioned this, and he said, if that ends, the economy of the Philippines will collapse. I agree because the remittances from the overseas Filipino workers significantly contribute to the country's economy. Like literally a lot of money. In 2022, remittances reached a record high of $36.14 billion. That's how much contribution the overseas Filipino workers are contributing to the Philippine economy. And with that, you're spurring consumer spending and supporting economic growth. And so, yeah, that is one major reason why a lot of Filipinos are leaving the country. A lot of Filipinos just really want to be able to support their families. And for a lot of people, that's very hard to do in the Philippines. Let's move on to the next reason why a lot of Filipinos are leaving the country. So there's this feeling of hopelessness in the Philippines, and this is very sad. There's a lot of challenges living in the Philippines. It is a paradise, but that paradise can turn into something else if you are very poor. The Philippine, not just that, that's one reason, okay, of the source of hopelessness. But if you live in the Philippines, you probably have heard of this as well. The Philippines government often gets criticized for various things such as corruption, that is a big problem in the country, incompetence, mudslinging, and other signs of an unstable management of a country. Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, that's true. A lot of Filipinos can relate to that feeling of hopelessness. Living in paradise is not much of a paradise, really, sometimes. Okay, Filipinos are desperate for revival and redemption from decades long agony. So a lot of Filipinos do end up, what's the term? They do call this kapit sa patalim. You're holding into this knife, because that's just how, holding onto a knife is what they call kapit sa patalim. They live that way because life's hard in the Philippines. So there's some progress in the country. We see that. But you would notice that a lot of this progress, if you're in the lower, I don't know if I should call this a caste because there's really no caste system in the Philippines, but if you're on that level where you're very very poor, you don't really feel that much of a progress. I mean, there's some progress in the country, but obviously the ones who benefit the most out of that progress is probably the rich. Mostly the rich, but the poor people of the country, they don't feel that much of a difference. It's still very difficult to live in the Philippines. All right, for the lower class, yeah, there's no caste system in the Philippines, but obviously there's really not a middle class in the Philippines. There is a very small, I'd say, upper middle class, but really you can see the difference between the rich and the poor. It's very, very big difference. So for the lower class in the Philippines, the only option is to leave the country. Sometimes people also feel hopelessness due to the natural challenges. Living in a paradise, as I mentioned, is not always so great because the country being a, what do you call that, the geographical, what's the word, position or location of the country. I was trying to look for that word. The geographical location of the country can be very challenging because, yeah, the Philippines is one of those countries in Southeast Asia which faces so many natural disasters. So the Philippines experiences approximately 20 typhoons each year, a lot. And some of these typhoons are super typhoons. And because again, it's geographical location. So the geographical location of the Philippines is along the typhoon belt in the Pacific. That's why we get at least 20 typhoons each year. Some Filipinos, like farmers, for example, they can't take a break. As I'm saying, so a lot of Filipinos, especially the farmers, they just can't take a break. So imagine if you're farming a land and then everything is about ready to get harvested and then a typhoon comes and everything's wiped out. You start over again. And for some people, I mean, how do you start over if you're relying on that harvest. So it's very hard. So these people do end up feeling that feeling of desperation and hopelessness. So again, some people just can't take a break. The same thing with the housing over there. Even if, let's say, if you have a wooden house and then you get hit by a super typhoon, and then of course you're gonna have to rebuild, and then you're in the process of rebuilding, and then another typhoon comes. It's just some people just can't take a break. Of course the rich probably don't feel as much, because I mean they also do, but at least they have the finances to keep rebuilding. But for the poor, how do you keep rebuilding if you don't have any source of income, and you are relying on that harvest, and then while you're rebuilding, another disaster comes. It's not just typhoon. We also have a lot of volcanoes. If you live in the Bicol region of the Philippines, they've got a lot of Mayon volcano is very, very much active all year long. So many other things, so many disasters, flooding, landslides. I mean, it's very challenging. That's one reason why a lot of people feel this desperation and this feeling of hopelessness. But generally Filipino people are very resilient, but sometimes you can't take so much of that. You get to a point where you're just kind of like, what, it's probably best if I just leave the country. And for those people, if they have that option, they would take that option. Okay, last but not the least, so for those Filipinos who end up settling abroad, a lot of them, if they have the opportunity, they do end up encouraging their family members, their relatives, to join them abroad. So that process creates a network that facilitates migration. So for those workers who do end up settling in the US, Canada, other parts of the world, once they're settled there, if they have that opportunity to take their family, to migrate their family from the Philippines to that country where they're settled, and they would do that. Okay, those are the top 3 reasons why Filipinos leave the Philippines or do end up leaving the Philippines. Now I'm gonna have to end this video here because my phone is almost literally like 3%. It's gonna die. I'll see you guys on my next video. Bye guys.